Hey, everybody, welcome. Turn on those cameras if you can. Hey there, Sarah. Taylor, good to see you. Hey, Shad. Hey, Liz and baby.
Oh, I'm trying to flash you guys.
Anything could happen in a wealth building meeting.
Anything could happen. Say hi to everyone. Say hello.
Oh, what a cutie. How old now?
I might get mad. He's almost 3 months.
Wow.
So fast. Oh my gosh.
It's big too. It's great.
Yeah, he's huge. I don't know how I'm gonna like continue holding him as he gets bigger because like you're too big for me.
You're gonna have that one really strong bicep.
Yeah. Well, luckily I switch back and forth all the time because I can't handle it on the one. He's just getting big though, huh?
Welcome everybody that's joining. If you can, hop on your camera. Hey, Linda. Boyd, good to see you.
Is this today we're doing this?
This is today.
All right, great.
We're just going to give people a few more minutes to join here. Standard realtor
Familiar
time.
faces here. Let's see. I think I know everybody that's on here. Sabrina, good morning. Shad, I'm familiar with you and all that Raiders paraphernalia. Liz, I don't think I've officially met your son yet.
Hey, hi. I came just to meet you, old boy.
Hey. Man, he's handsome.
Smiling and talkative until you put like anything like a phone or a computer in his face. And then he's suddenly quiet. Oh, stop, dude.
That is really cool. Welcome. Sarah, I don't know. Have we met, Sarah?
I think once over Zoom.
Over Zoom.
Not an official meeting.
And what, are you on a team or are you in the Salt Lake office or?
Yeah, I'm in the Sugar House office, but it's just me.
Right.
Came in October.
Nice to meet you. And then
Nice
I've got
to
a
meet you.
window just above that, a gal with blonde hair. It says KW Salt Lake City. Who's that?
This is Ashley.
Ashley, good to see you. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
Yeah, Ashley's actually on my team, Boyd.
Great.
Yeah.
What does she do for you?
All the things.
Don't make us blush, Alan. You have a way of doing that.
She's
Dang it, Alan, you're poaching my talent pool.
And then, I'm sorry, but the MCA Al Bryant, who's that?
McCall, I'm on the Stern team in Sugar House.
Great, nice to meet you. I don't
Nice
know
to
if we
meet
met. It's been hard with COVID. Even if I've seen you, you might have had one of those masks on, so. Marita, I know. Jake, welcome. Nice to see you. Stephen, okay. Alan, is there anything else you want to set the stage for this or?
Yeah, so let me just welcome everybody to our monthly wealth building committee meeting. So the goal of the wealth building committee on the ALC is to help promote other agents to invest and build their wealth through real estate. So we bring on folks that can help us understand different aspects of that. There's always also, conversation just as far as dealing with investors as agents that happens on our calls. Next month, we're going to have a probate attorney come and just discuss the probate process. Talk about how you can use that process both for investing and helping your clients, obviously, that are going through that process. Today, we have Boyd Brown, who most everyone knows, of course, and he is going to chat with us about commercial investing. I asked Boyd to come on because I think a lot of us that are residential agents primarily focus on residential investing, and I think that we're selling ourselves a little short in the opportunities that could come from commercial investing as well. And so Boyd's here to kind of help us walk through that. Take it away, Boyd.
Okay, great. That's a good setting. So I haven't been on any of these, and I'm really applaud Alan for doing them. I think it's an important part of what we do at our office. We started several years ago. I think we went through the MREI, and one of the results of that is of the 15 or 16 people that walked through that is about a 4-week process, I think, of going through the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Investor book. I was overwhelmed that within like 3 months, people in that class reached out and said, hey, I bought my first townhome. I bought my first duplex. I started investing. I got a plan going. I think Linda was one of them. Mona Stevens was one of them at the time. And what's resulted in that is, we've had several of our agents begin down that path of investing, and they may have changed their course or thought about it differently, but have really gone on to create some wealth and an alternative wealth stream for themselves that is just so obvious that we're out in real estate. And I feel like part of my role now in the company, I've done a lot of different things, but one of my primary goals is to try to collaborate and help you guys think about your wealth and building wealth, and maybe stuff that I'm better suited to talk about than filling out an FHA addendum and getting listings and stuff, because there's a lot of great talent at our company that can help you with that also. So I guess just to start, and I have a lot of stuff. I mean, you can line me up if you want to talk about investing or development. I could talk all day. So I have a few things that I want to share with you guys. I want to go over some points. I'm hoping this is somewhat interactive. I was hoping we could do this live because I feel like there's just some stuff lost on Zoom. So engage me, give me some feedback. Justin, if it's just a middle finger, at least I know you're listening. And I would, yes, all right, get that out of the way early. So I'll go through a little bit of I want to tell a little bit of story about my investing, and then we can talk about some specific deals, but also concepts. So I think I got into real estate initially just because I had some compelling interest in being an investor. I don't know how or why, but when I was younger, one of my great mentors in my life was my grandfather. He was an entrepreneur, he's a business person and a salesperson. And he just loved telling me lessons about how he built his wealth. And he was a very generous man. And I always looked up to him for that. He made a lot of money, but he was also very generous with the family and his friends and things. And he just seemed to have an awesome lifestyle that I wanted to emulate him from an early stage. And so some of his wealthy buddies would get a kick out of, when I was a kid, they would tell me these business stories when we were sitting on a sailboat. They were retired and had made their stuff. But what it all came down to was that his one buddy, Jim Quinn, this guy put together these real estate deals, partnership deals. And because my grandfather was like a mentor and helped him early in his career, he would always bring my grandfather in for like a 1% or a 2% or something of these pretty big conglomerate deals he put together. At one point, he put the financing together for the baseball stadium in Cleveland. And so back then, that was a pretty significant deal that he raised funds for and was involved in. And one of the things as my grandfather got old and was starting to get senile, he also had a great penchant for trying to not pay a lot of taxes. Like at the point where he was retired, his whole goal in life was to try to outsmart the IRS because he felt like he had paid taxes his whole life and he was trying to hold on to some of his wealth. And one time I was having breakfast with him and I said, Gramp, that Jim Quinn seems like his business is still kicking. And he says, what a great opportunity that I had to invest in some of these things. He says, except now, he said, he keeps sending me checks for a couple $100,000 and it's messing up my tax strategy. And so what it was is all these real estate deals they put together back in the 80s and 90s that my grandfather had 1 or 2%. They were recapitalizing these or selling these. And he said, I just gave him money, or was happy to be in the deal because he was friends. And little did I know, it was such a huge part of my wealth plan that I'm benefiting. I'm just getting this mailbox, these checks, because they're selling these things that we put together 20 years ago. And it just had a huge impact on my mindset to think, man, my grandfather worked his whole career to build something up. And these little investments were almost like just because we're giving him an unbelievable return 25 years later. And so as I got into real estate, I started to work for Kyle Miller, who had his own brokerage, but he also had a property management. And Kyle, who was a great mentor for me early in real estate, we had this office in Fort Union. It was on the 3rd floor, and he owned about 100 rental properties, and he managed about 200 more. But we would have floor desk, and I would sit there at the front of the office. And the last 4 days of the month and the first 4 days of the month, when I was sitting there trying to get business out here, this ding ding, and it was the elevator opening, and people would walk in his office and hand rent checks to the front desk. And there was just a steady stream, and it had such an impact on me. I'm like, man, what the hell is Kyle doing? Like, people from all walks of life. There were poor people, there were rich people, there were white people, there were, I mean, every walk of life was coming to this office in Fort Union and handing checks to the front desk. And I said, man, I got to figure that out. And so that was early in my sales career. And it seemed like early on I decided investing, I had to do that because I wanted to get into the business side of it and seeing that cash flow coming in. Because I saw that Kyle wasn't working near as hard as I was or some of the other agents in the office, but I was guessing he was making pretty good money from all these rental properties that he owned. And his story is a compelling one. I'd love to have him come talk to us. He's pretty shy about it, but in his early 20s, he went from the car business, bought it. He was the first C21 franchise owner in Utah. And he got a contract with HUD to manage all of the HUD foreclosures in a certain downturn. And at that point, they gave him first option to assume any of the government loans for $500. So he would basically have a maintenance company look at these things, and if they made sense, he'd write a check for $500 and he'd own it. And the net result is, you know, by the time he was 29 or 30 years old, he had about 100 single-family rental properties around Salt Lake, and I'm not sure he's sold any of them since then, and it's worked out pretty good for him. It basically made him, in what he told me when I was in my 20s and he was in his late 30s, he said, it's almost boring because I became bulletproof from my real estate investments by the time I was 35. And I'm like, you jackass. But anyway, it's a pretty compelling story to just start and take a chance and invest. So I started buying single family homes, and at a certain point, this goes back to lessons as a kid, playing Monopoly or reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and playing the rat race game, getting out of the rat race. It's, you know, you in Monopoly, I think are the houses red and the hotels are green. Is that right, Alan? The other way around? Green houses and red is so it's the same theory, is that you buy enough of the cheap little ones because for residential, the barrier to entry is lower. You can get in with less down. And we've had classes on strategies of how to do lease with options or seller financing. So I had no capability in my early 20s to buy a commercial office building, absolutely none. But I was able to put together an FHA deal on a duplex in Sandy that was $119,000. that Linda was involved in purchasing, I think 20 years later or something. And it was all I could do to put that deal together, but it was a start. And I probably made, in that first couple years, I was probably making $100 or $125 a month. But as you guys know, if you're doing any investing, there's also the advantages of depreciation and a lot of other things. But what I was really doing was I was starting to build my wealth through real estate. So owning that rental property, I think I held it probably for 15 years. And the value went from 119 to like 220 or something like that, which is, it's not the biggest real estate story you'd ever hear, but it's pretty significant. I just figured, in addition to everything I was doing as a real estate agent, I gained, not counting the tax benefits, probably an additional $8,000 or $9,000 a year income to my wealth that I made just by owning that duplex. So the thought is, if I can do that with one, and I just focus on buying one a year for 10 years, I'll be in a situation where I'll basically have, at that point, I thought if I had $100,000 of passive income that I was making off my real estate, that would be, I will have arrived, and I'll be flying around in private jets and all that stuff. But anyway, so the goal has changed over the years, but it just really is, it takes time, and Justin can vouch for this. I had a client named Dave Hauser that owned about 15 duplexes, and I got to sell those one at a time for him. And Dave was not a particularly smart guy. He wasn't very cool or nice or anything, But he had made these investments over time and he owned them. And I just saw every time I sold one, he was putting about $75,000 in his pocket. And I added it up that he was making about $30,000 a month on these crappy duplexes that were spread out over West Valley and Murray and all over the place. And it kind of blew my mind. And Dave even said at one of the closing tables, I said, God, Dave, you're so smart. I can't believe you did this. He said, I am really not that smart. And I said, well, you're right. But he said, real estate makes a lot of us smart over time. He said, all I did was took a chance and started buying stuff. And then time goes by and makes me look smart, Boyd. And you'll be smart if you start investing more and just let time go by. And for some of us, when we're the age of Phoenix, I think I saw him or Mike Fox or some of these young guys, we never think we're going to be 50 years old. So it's hard to have the perspective that we need to buy something now and really be okay with just making a little incremental income. But at some point, we're either going to be old and wealthy with assets, or we're going to be old and broke without assets. And I chose that I wanted to be on that side of old. I didn't really choose that I wanted to be old, but that was a natural progression of life and have assets. And that's what I've done. So I will say that it's exciting. I'm glad that you're having the conversation. I really want to applaud Alan for driving the conversation. The other thing I want to start with, and you guys can take off of mute on this one, but I want to just have you think a little bit about what the difference of investing and speculating is. So does someone want to take a shot at that?
I will.
If no,
Yeah, Justin.
I think investing is like educated risk, where you've got a game plan, you've calculated some returns, and you're basing it on real data. And speculating is more or less hoping that the market's going to go up, or hoping that it's going to be worth more than you bought it for later on.
Yeah. And so that's a really good point. Anyone else on a comment on the difference in investing or speculating?
yeah, I feel like speculating is taking a risk without maybe a proven track record, whereas investing is you take, similar to what Justin was saying, a calculated risk based on something that is a model that works. That's kind of how I look at those.
Yeah, and I think to me, one of the differences, and Justin pointed on this, is having a plan. So I have a plan to invest in real estate. And when I shifted my mindset to think about what I consider investment, I look at a 20-year time frame. So I want to buy something with the strategy that it's going to be worth more and will have some cash flow. And I think about it either 5 years, 10 years, or something. Speculating is a little bit of flipping homes, or right now the market is so hot, there are guys that are speculating just putting new construction under contract and flipping contracts. Taylor and I are involved in a transaction on a $5.5 million industrial building that a speculator tied up and literally is flipping for, I don't know if we can talk about the numbers, but a gross bump in a short amount of time. And that is speculating. Speculating is not terrible. It's okay. I just want to encourage you guys to know the difference, because right now, and Alan, you and I had a conversation that I think you're making a bunch of money on a fix and flip that you may not even have to get a paintbrush dirty on. You controlled a contract and someone wanted it more than you. And so you're going to flip that thing, and it's kind of investing, but it's really speculating. Bitcoin to me is speculating, but that doesn't mean it can't be a good long-term investment. I don't want to throw shade on the Bitcoin people. But I do think it's important for you guys to think about that just in long-term and investing, and not kid yourself that you're an investor if you're speculating. I think the biggest difference for me is thinking about growing your long-term wealth. And it's so hard I think it's hard to not be enamored by the stories of people making $100,000 on their Tesla stock, or flipping a Richmond American home or an Edge home or something and making that money, or a fix and flip. That is great. It's income, but it's also treated by the IRS much like ordinary income. So you're speculating and you can win or lose. and I don't want to sound like the old fart here scaring you guys, but we're in a spot in the market right now where honestly, it would be really hard to lose money on speculating on real estate in the last 18 months. Would you guys agree with that? And so sometimes that kids us into believing that our model is valid and that our past performance will guarantee future performance. And that is just, I just want to throw it out there that right now, if you're buying any tech stocks on your Robinhood account or have any contracts, put any real estate under contract, everything has gone up at least 20% probably in the last 18 months. So just be careful. And I want to read, this is Keith Cunningham's book, The Road Less Stupid, which applies to me. I think there's some good lessons in here. For those of you who are interested in Keith Cunningham, he was the actual rich dad of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And in the story, he built tremendous wealth and was the hero to Robert Kiyosaki because he had real estate wealth. But the rest of the story is he's also the guy that lost a portfolio worth $750 million and drove it right into the ground, lost every penny, and has since built it back up. So he's a very compelling public speaker, but I mean, he always says you could learn a lot from a guy that lost $750 million. And so one of the things in this Road Less Stupid, I just will read a few of these things, and then I'm sorry to be too philosophical on this. If this isn't what you're looking for, we can get into some details. But one of the things he says, that this is in a log of lessons learned. He says there is no way to correct without divorcing the story and marrying the truth. Facts do not cease to exist just because you ignore them or you're in a good market. This is one I think which is relevant for us just to think about, is a good market tends to hide mistakes. Nothing takes the place of being actively engaged in the running of your business and being thoughtful as well as skeptical about the future. The other one is that I always liked, and this could be a bumper sticker, is catching a big wave does not make you a good swimmer. And I think it's important that we just have that conversation with all of us as we're out there speculating, and you should be, and investing and doing all these things, that we just be careful that there's some good fundamentals backing up your decisions. And it's not just because someone on Facebook just made 50 grand on putting 5 edge homes under contract. Does that resonate with any of you guys? Okay.
I was planning on retiring on Bitcoin, but I guess I'll change now.
I think some people can. I mean, I've heard some incredible stories. We have an agent in South Valley that I think he's up like $700,000 in the last 9 months, and he got in early and he's been touting it. And I mean, if he's smart, he probably can retire on that. So again, I don't want to throw shade on it. I just want to make sure you guys know that the speculation does have some risks. So, let's go into the commercial. So based on that whole plan, how I got into commercial was by building up some of the little greenhouses and being able to trade them into bigger assets. Things like that duplex we first talked about. I bought a house in Kearns once on a lease option for like $2,500 down, and I ended up rolling that into a piece of land that I was able to develop and have some real equity into development. So I'll go through what I feel like are some of the key differences in commercial and residential as investments, and then you guys can ask some questions, and then I can walk through a couple of specific examples. Is this kind of the direction you guys would like to go? Is there anything else that I'm okay? So there's a couple reasons for commercial. Again, this goes back to monopoly money. I have a personal goal, I'll just throw it out here, of owning $100 million in real estate. That is something I have. I have a specific date to get there. And I think I'm on track. I'm probably somewhere in the $16 to $17 million range, thanks much in part to the bump up in the market over the last right now. So I have my work cut out to me, and my goal is to do that before I'm 58 years old. And so to do that, if I was buying single family homes, that's an awful lot of loans. It's a lot of tenants. It's a lot of houses. So one of the compelling parts to me to get into commercial is that I could trade some of the little guys into a big one. And there's some brain damage in getting a big loan, but I have 2 office buildings that are house Keller Williams offices. And they're around $5.5 million on the acquisition. And we got those with SBA loans. And SBA was really nice because it reduces the amount down to about 10%. But the brain damage to go through getting a loan, if any of you have been through it to get investment properties, is really pretty difficult. And I thought, man, if I'm going to get to $100 million, I'll be on homicide charges before I get that many residential mortgages. And so these commercial loans are hard to get, but once you get them and get that in place, I mean, one $5 million building is the equivalent of probably the same brain damage of, I don't know, maybe only 15 houses in this market, but back, it used to be more like 30 or 40 houses. And so that's part of my strategy of doing that. So one of the big differences in residential, obviously we talked about, it's a low point of entry. You can use your commission, you can get into something pretty quickly. Most commercial real estate that you're investing, if you're getting conventional financing, you're probably looking at between 30 and 35% down as a down payment. So again, in context of that, you can leverage with a residential mortgage, you have a lot more buying power. And maybe the commercial is something to think about once you build up some equity and can trade into something. Because for a lot of us, when we're in that class of MREI, if we were to wait until we had enough money saved up to buy $1 million commercial property, it might keep us out of the market for 4 or 5 years. In a lot of ways, I think you're better off buying a 2-bedroom condo in Tooele and just getting in the game. And you can do that. You know, it takes you less time and a less commitment to get into real estate. Linda, go ahead, Melanie.
Really newbie question. How does I understand that there's commission on the table, but if you can wrap that into a down payment, to me, the order of operations doesn't add up. How does that work?
Let's say you find a house and this is probably something Alan does all day, every day, but if you find a house to buy for $300,000 and there's a buyer agency commission, you could just write in there that the agent is planning on using a portion or all of their commission towards the down payment. Most lenders are okay with that. You'll probably need broker Dave to write a letter to the underwriter saying we're okay with Melanie using this money. The way I've done it is I used to just call for rents or for sale by owners and say, hey, I see you have a vacant house. The one I bought in Kearns, I see you have a vacant house you're trying to rent. Are you interested in selling it? Well, yeah, anything. I went to a seminar. I'm not a real estate person. They were a don't wanter. You don't have a lot of don't wanters in this market because the market's so hot. So there's less flexibility. Excuse me. So when I went there, I just said, I'll do a lease option with you. I'll give you $1,000, which will pay the payment that you're late on right now and give you some relief. I'll take over all this cleanup and find a tenant, and I'll close in a year. But I'll build in a 7% for sale by owner commission when I close. So I did the cleanup out of my pocket on a Home Depot card, got a tenant in there, and then was able to go get financing and was able to use the 7% in that case. At times I've had them hold me to 6%, but I've always been able to use my 3% as a buyer agency if I'm representing myself.
Thank you.
So while we're on that, that's a great strategy, and you can do that in commercial too. Like Shad, and Shad, do you mind if I talk a little bit about your personal life?
Well,
We'll stick to commercial real estate. Shad and I are doing a deal right now where he brought a lease to a commercial property that I'm developing, and he is going to roll his commission into being a partner in the building. So you could do it on commercial also. So it could be that he is representing a buyer and he could say, hey, I'd like to be a partner on this, and I'd like to put my commission, let's say Shad was buying a $3 million property for a client of his, and potentially that's a $90,000 commission. He might go to those guys and say, hey, I'd really be interested in leaving half my commission in the deal. Is $45,000 equity helpful to you? And if so, let me know, let's see what that would look like. And then he would be trading short-term income to try to get it into a long-term gain situation. You have to be careful how you handle that tax-wise. I am not an accountant. I don't want to play one on this screen. But I think that's a valid strategy to do that. And we should all be thinking about those ways. You have to be careful as an agent not to get greedy and the deal's more about you than them. I mean, the minute your client starts feeling like, wait a minute, Shad, this isn't a good building for me. You're just trying to get your commission so that you can, you know, be a part of the deal. Obviously, you want to be careful on agency on that stuff. Any other questions on that part of it? Okay. The other thing on residential, and again, this is Pooch knows this, is the management company is, I've always found in real estate, you have there's so much liquidity. I mean, you can always sell a house. It doesn't matter how crappy it is, if the price is right, you can sell it. There's an unlimited amount of humans that want houses to live in. Some markets, it's harder to sell them. And commercial has a lot less liquidity. So I think you always want to think a little bit more about, if you're getting into commercial, one, what's my long-term strategy to own this building, but also how would I sell this if I needed to? And the example I will give you is Circuit City or a Marriott hotel in COVID. So like, there was a point 10 years ago that owning Circuit Cities would be, you would be like the guy. You'd walk around and tell Poocher, hey man, I got 10 Circuit Cities across the Western United States. It's just easy cash. They're sending me money every month. They're these giant boxes in well-located areas. Well, Circuit Cities went dark. And there's a Circuit City by my house in Fort Union that I think was dark for 9 years. And so commercial real estate, a lot of times, not only is it not as liquid, but it also finding a tenant. And this is one of the things I want to talk to you guys about as you get into this. And my guess is your first few commercial investments will be smaller buildings. I really want you to think about the value in commercial is more about, can I bring the right tenant? And you're investing as much in the tenant as you are in the property. And so I think in the next year, there's going to be so many opportunities on this A- and B type commercial real estate, because there'll be landlords that bought who aren't really real estate guys, who all of a sudden their tenants have moved out. Look, there's a lot of cash in the market. A lot of people are doing good, but there are a lot of businesses that are going to go away because of COVID and they'll never come back. If you don't believe me, drive from Redwood Road to Bangor on 35th South and count how many of those crappy little strip malls are 50% empty. And I would bet that even the ones that are full are probably not getting most of their rent right now. So there's a coming exchange in all that real estate. And the only way value can be created in that real estate is somebody smart like you comes in and figures out a way to repurpose it or go find a tenant that's willing to pay for that, because empty commercial real estate is very illiquid and you can make good deals on it, but if you can't rent it, it doesn't really matter. I'll give you one more example, and this isn't to scare you, but think about this. Lowe's was in the building on 90th South, just east of the freeway, for a long time. I tried to do a deal with them early in my real estate career to move them to Sandy. They ended up anyway relocating to the Quarry Bend, and they put another store up somewhere else, and they vacated that 90th South property. That is prime freaking real estate right off of I-15 in the middle of Sandy, and that building sat empty for a freaking decade. And so the landlord must have had the ability to do that, but now it's been repurposed and there's finally some B grade. I think it's like a at home or something, takes like half of it. But that landlord, I mean, they lost revenue for 10 years on a lease like Lowe's. I just couldn't even imagine how heavy you have to be to withstand that. I watched the Woodbury company. I know those guys really well, have a ton of respect for them. They own a ton of commercial real estate. If you haven't, go on their website and look, they own all kinds of stuff. And it amazes me, I'll go buy their properties and they'll have stuff sitting vacant and they just can afford it, I guess. But there's an ice cream shop by my house over here on 13th East that he kicked out the tenant like 3 years ago. And it's an end cap, nice commercial space, and it's sat empty for 3 years. And so I think Woodbury has enough money. No one like you guys, the value would be going and find another ice cream guy or someone that you believe in and put them in there, get a lease, and then there's some value to that real estate. Yeah, so that's where I say on the commercial, where residential, you have unlimited tenants or people that could come in and rent it just by adjusting the price, or getting exposure, cleaning it up. I think in commercial, you just have to think more about, what am I going to do if this tenant leaves? Let's see.
Boy, Jake has a question in chat. If we can maybe take a moment and answer that.
Sure.
So his question is, what is your take on triple net national tenants versus smaller mom and pop tenants? It seems like it would be easier to replace mom and pop.
Yeah, Jake, that's a good question. Thanks for bringing that up. The triple net is an ideal. That seems to be a place that institutional investors and sort of big money people will go to. And it's almost more like a bond. It's more guaranteed. You're going to have a specific return that is guaranteed by a national tenant. So what they're trading the volatility or the risk for the guarantee that it's a Checker or a Starbucks or someone like that, that is what we call a national credit tenant. The nice thing about a national credit tenant on some of these deals is typically they're not only guaranteed by the franchisee, they're also guaranteed by, let's use Starbucks. I don't know that Starbucks does deals quite like that, but like a Checker Auto or something like that, a McDonald's, those are also guaranteed by the national company. So you're betting on, even if the local franchisee goes out of business, you still are going to get that. So in a lot of ways, it's a comfortable lease and people go for that. The returns are lower because it's lower risk, in my opinion. The other thing is, most of those deals right now, there's so much institutional money chasing them. The cap rates are condensed and it's a lot of cash to get into them. So I think it would be a good thing for you guys to think about diversifying into in the future, but as a first deal, it's pretty difficult. So I think, again, where you guys are real estate professionals and see deals, I think our opportunities are more on the local tenants, finding somebody you believe in, a compelling story. And not everybody wants to own real estate. One of the strategies that I've seen work for some partners of mine, Thrive Development, and they used to do this with Rimrock originally, is they just had a model where they would go put together a couple dental groups or doctors because they have good cash and they're good tenants, and a dentist will spend so much money on their space, but they like to lease. They don't necessarily own it. So if you get a dentist to come and lease 3,000 feet of space from you, and they spend $400,000 of improvements on that 3,000 feet of space, a dentist is not going to move every time their lease comes up. I think, something like that, if you know of them, you know their business, I would love to go find a building to put my dentist in. I know he's renting right now. He's been there for 10 years, but if he said, Boyd, I will move, you go find me a business, I'll put $500,000 of dental equipment in here, and I'm establishing my business, I'm training people to come to me, I don't want to move every 3 years. To me, that is a great risk to take. Does that answer your question, Jake?
It does. Thanks.
Yep. Justin, do you want to add on to that? Some of these, Justin, obviously, a lot of us have some experience. May want to comment on that.
Well, just maybe one comment, and I think we're seeing it more now. You see, like, some of these national credit tenants have filed bankruptcy, and they really tie up your building for 9 months, a year, and you can't do anything about it as a landlord. So I don't know, maybe there is some nuts to having a local guy with personal guarantee and some other collateral you can deal with. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, I've kind of taken that approach a little bit in my life. People always try to talk me into doing deals out of state or out of my area, and I feel like, hey, if it's local and I can go smell it, touch it, and feel it, and kind of get a sense of what it is, I feel more comfortable. And the other points that are in this book, Keith Cunningham's book, is, expect the unexpected. Could any of us have expected COVID? No. And so whatever we assume is going to be the case, like whatever the credit tenant is could never go away. Guess what? It could go away. And then you're stuck. Like Justin said, a lot of these retail tenants right now are tying all the mall owners up in these huge lawsuits, these huge national companies. like a Ruth Chris or something like that, and they have the lawyers to fight the landlords and aren't paying a damn penny right now until the settlements happen. So as a small commercial real estate investor, you have no way out of that battle. So where there's some advantages on those guys, I mean, obviously, if it's a local guy, you can go say, hey, obviously you're not selling any hamburgers. Let's get you out of here so I can clean up the building. I'll try to get you released from the lease if you help me lease it. Might be a lot easier if it is someone that you can go talk to. So great point, Justin. Anyone else have experience on that they want to add to this, Alan?
Oh, I just had a question. We've talked a lot about commercial when it comes to retail or office space. What's your take on multifamily commercial?
I love it. And I was kind of veering away from that a little bit just because I feel like that might have been something you guys already had talked about. But I've always loved the residential, and it's because I feel like it's our expertise. And I think there's something about staying in our lane and sticking to what we know. And, you know, again, multifamily is terrific. I would love to buy more multifamily. I stuck with single families. I've owned some fourplexes and stuff, but I always liked that people would treat it like home and I'd have less turnover, probably because I don't have, you know, Justin set up with management. I didn't have quite the patience for the management, I think, that could be required on the multifamily. But as an asset, I think it'd probably be one of my favorites. Again, but it's a favorite of everybody right now. In our market, I have calls every single day for someone that wants a 100-unit apartment building. The cap rates are so compressed, and the return, I just feel like they're so overvalued right now. Unless I can build it or do a major fix up on it, I just don't know how I could make sense of buying a nice multifamily property right now. So I've gone into more industrial and some different things, but I guess if I had my way, if I felt like I could get the same cap rate and could go buy a 30-unit apartment versus anything in commercial, I'd probably stick to the apartments, just because at the core, I understand the residential real estate market more than anything. And I think that's probably valid for you guys.
So Boyd, maybe I'm reading between the lines here, but I think you're probably saying, hey, I have a relationship of understanding with the IRR versus the cash on cash return to make that determination. Maybe you could talk more about what your viewpoint is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you progress as an investor, you want to analyze and look at a single family deal, a multifamily, or commercial the same way. What's my risk and what's the return? And Justin talked about the internal rate of return. It's like, if I put $100,000 into this deal, what's my return going to be on a monthly and an annual basis? And then I always look at what's the upside, you know, if everything goes well, or if I add value, how it would add value. And so you're just comparing asset classes. Like Justin is saying, if there's if I have to spend, let's just throw a number out there. Right now, I've heard the most recent numbers I've heard is that investors are paying over $300,000 a door for apartment stuff in Salt Lake County for 2-bedroom apartments. I got used to hearing the $80,000. Then I tried to get myself comfortable with 150 or 200. To me, I just don't feel like you can pay $300,000 a door for apartment complex, and I don't think the rents are high enough to justify that. The interest rates help, but I would analyze any commercial investment the same way as say, what are the rents? What's my return? In commercial, we use cap rate, which is just basically the return on the money you're putting down, and make that choice. And then the other thing is, I think it's important is to do something that you feel like you have some expertise, or it's close to home, or that you can manage, or we're talking about in commercial, if you bring a tenant you like I can probably get the kind of cap rate I would want in a beat up, crappy 100-unit up in Ogden, Utah. And so it would look attractive on a cap rate per se, but if I went in there and looked at it, the amount of management and upkeep and work to turn that around to get the rents up, or feel like it was a solid building that wasn't a maintenance nightmare, would take a big investment for me. So you just want to look at all factors. And again, right now, I think all investments are priced pretty high. That doesn't mean don't buy them, but just be careful you don't get caught up. Justin, I don't know what you've seen, but some of these cap rate deals that I've seen on multifamily, I don't know if I paid cash and got no debt on it. I don't know that I could make the darn numbers work, which will change. Everything is cyclical, and every asset class, kind of has its heyday, and it'll go up and down. And just right now, I would love to have more multifamily. I'm building some stuff that houses that I'm going to do as rentals. So I believe in the residential. But you also want to look for opportunities in the market, especially when you're getting into it. And I think there's going to be some big opportunities in the commercial. Any other questions or comments? Shed, do you have any comments on that? Or am I the only guy that gets people call that wants to steal a 100-unit holiday?
No, I would say touching on the multifamily aspect too. I've actually heard a lot of people getting out of multifamily and going into stuff that is a little less volatile with tenants. I mean, just in talking to, what's his name, Mark, forget his last name with Colliers, but
he's the one selling the multifamilies, Mark Jensen.
Yeah, Mark Jensen. So he's basically saying that a lot of his guys are getting out of that and going into more of the industrial side because they have better returns, and tenants typically last a little bit longer in there too. So
yeah, Mark just posted they sold a deal in Geneva, which again, Geneva is up and coming and it's a big deal, but they sold a student housing deal this week for $405,000 per bed. And there's 4 beds in a damn, I mean, when I saw him blast that over, I was like, dude, how do you sleep at night? Like, someone at some point is going to have to sell this or tell their partners that they bought this building. I mean, I just don't know how you even do the math on something like that. And so again, maybe that'll come down. There'll be non-real estate people that are buying all these assets, and they'll be repriced and foreclosed, and different opportunities will come up. I just don't think there's a lot of opportunities in multifamily right now. Any other questions? And if not, maybe I can share a specific deal to walk through, or Linda, go ahead.
So given the situation with multifamily, right? So say you're in a position where you're looking at doing a monopoly trade and getting into more of the commercial space, knowing how difficult it is to find a deal that makes sense in the multifamily realm, where is the next best place for you to be putting your money right now?
That's a great question. I like what Shad says, like the industrial. We've been brokering these smaller industrial deals, and Shad was doing a lot. Shad does it now. Taylor's doing it, but these smaller, like office warehouse condos, the rent has escalated so much on Class A office, like a Silicon Slopes and all this stuff. And it's really great when the market's cool and there's Adobe and all this stuff. But most of Utah is driven by small businesses. It's not Adobe, it's these small businesses. It's construction, it's engineers, it's guys like this that don't really need to be in Class A office space that, Brandon Fugel is leasing 100,000 square feet. So what I found is in these smaller office warehouse deals, it gives a lot of flexibility because like my engineering firm is in one of those, and they've had it almost all workspace, one overhead door that they can put their trucks in for doing soils tests. But it's set up, it feels like an office when you're inside of it. And those are they're in Midvale, just east of the freeway, around 7,200. Like there's a lot of that stuff in Murray and Midvale. I think the building is Shad probably sold something like that for 500,000 a year and a half ago, and they're probably trading for 750. But that sort of a tenant in there or an owner user, again, there's a lot of liquidity in that. There's not a lot of liquidity in a 100,000 Class A office building. So you could find a tenant for something like that, or find a business like Focus Engineering, who's my engineer, who would probably be happy to just sign a 10-year lease and be paying $15 a month as a rental rate versus, even in Union Park right now, if they were to take Class A office, is 25 or 30. And they would rather the neighbors in the business park than a bunch of mortgage people running around, mad at them for bringing their muddy boots in the lobby sort of thing. So I like that. I'm in storage right now. I'm developing it. I think storage is compressed just like multifamily. And I was I speculate on a piece of land. So I love the industrial side of it, and I love the storage, but it's a high barrier to entry. Like to buy any storage units existing right now is probably $5 million or something. But if you can think of something that, like that light industrial, office warehouse, class B office, although office spooks me a little bit. And then I'm going to show you an office deal I'm speculating on right now. But I think there's just a shift in office, and it could go a lot of ways. One thing I see in office is that if we don't really figure out this virus and it's not doesn't just magically disappear, I do think that some people that are in these larger downtown offices and big upscale offices at the point of the mountain and stuff may spread out where they have more smaller offices, and maybe part of their team is in Sandy, part of their team's in Lehigh, part of their team is wherever, but they're not all going downtown to the giant corporate headquarters. So I feel like there's at least a chance that this sort of class B office stuff will have a bit of a recovery. And so that maybe buying an office condo, and there's a lot of those that were built in the 90s. They haven't built a ton of them lately, but I mean, that's an area to look at. And then retail, as weird as it sounds, like if you can come up with a compelling reason, and again, this is where you really make a deal in real estate. It's not by paying retail. It's like, how do you come up with value? So if you have, like, as a residential agent, you have all these people that do business, and if they say, gosh, I really need this for my business or that, you should be on the lookout to say, well, if they have a solid business, would you sign a 5 or 10-year lease? If I go and find that building for you, is that something that you would commit to? And again, you don't want one of these startup guys that's going to start a business because he had a bright idea on late night TV. You want, a lot of these established business, not even on their radar to own a business. They just know that their business has expanded beyond what they can do. And, that would be a good way for us to collaborate. If you have a tenant, talk to Shad, talk to Alan, talk to Taylor, talk to me. It's like, let's help you find a building, and then you can work your way in either as a primary investor by trading out of one of your houses, or just do a partnership deal where you say to the business, say, hey, why don't we do this? You sign a 10-year lease. We can help you go get an SBA loan, and let's cut me in for 10% of the deal. I'll use my commission. And you can actually double dip a little bit. Broker Dave's not on here, but again, this is legit. These are the kind of things that makes Broker Dave's ears perk up. But you could potentially pay yourself for the lease, because that's a legitimate thing. You're signing a 10-year lease, and so you could be compensated for the lease and the purchase of the building. So there could be a really big commission opportunity. Let's just say it's a Shad, can you do a building like that for like $800,000, like a little office warehouse deal still?
Yeah.
So like
probably about 150 a foot.
Yeah. So one of the businesses, Shad, we sold, they were getting out of business, a printing business. They were, they made flyers and stuff for real estate agents and all sorts of printing, and they had a bunch of equipment, but we sold their business. It was a great building, but that would be a great one. If you had anyone that wanted something in Murray, again, this is an asset that's gone, that would sign a 10-year lease on this really cool little building just down by the Fashion Place Mall west of the freeway. I mean, that would be a great deal. And that one, I think we sold for like 700 or something. Like I said, they're probably trading at $1 million right now, but it's a small enough deal that you could trade a duplex or something into it and work out, do pretty well on it. And again, you're trading into a bigger asset, presumably less headaches, more depreciation. I mean, a lot of advantages, but you're banking more on your tenant than how cool that building is.
Well, I have a quick question. If you were to go and move towards something like, say, an $800,000 commercial purchase, on the loan or financing side, what would we need to keep in mind that we would have to bring? I mean, you mentioned 30 to 35%, but then if you use SBA, it was less. Like, I think that's something that for a lot of us that haven't invested in commercial yet, like, we're afraid of.
Yeah. And it is scary. I mean, it's typically the down payment, depending on the asset, is going to be 25 or 30%. So again, in that example, let's just say we were talking sort of that asset that Shad was at 800,000. So 30% is 250,000. So that is the barrier to entry. Now, where that becomes compelling is if Linda can do a 1031 exchange and she takes a house that she bought in Rose Park for $160,000 8 years ago, that now people would stand in line to pay her $400,000 for. She has that much equity, and so when she does a 1031 exchange, instead of paying taxes on her gain on that home in Rose Park, she rolls it into this, has her down payment, and you can get the commercial financing money right now. Is I got quoted 4.5% on a deal like that just this week. And I mean, I honestly, years ago, if I could get 7%, the first commercial building I bought, I got 7% on our Wilmington building, and I thought I was doing great on it. So again, that's how you can come up with the down payment. The SBA is brain damage. I'm really only 32 years old, but I've done 3 SBA loans. So, I mean, honestly, the amount of your life that gets sucked out of you for doing SBA loan is incredible. But you have to own or occupy, the business has to own or occupy either 50 or 60% of the building. So you can only use SBA, and it's a great rate. Right now, the SBA loans are closing in the 3s, and they're guaranteed. It's a fixed rate for 25 years. So it's very compelling. Most commercial loans will reset either every 5 or 7 years. Even if you get a 4% rate, almost no standard commercial loan will lock in a rate like a residential mortgage for 30 years. They reset those every 5 or 7 years. And one of the challenges is they will reappraise the building to make sure you have the right loan to value. And so that's when the market goes down. That's when it can get a little spooky. If they say, hey, Linda, by the way, why don't you throw another $100,000 equity at this just to keep you at that 70% rate? Which, again, I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm just saying that is something different than in the residential side. So I do want to take some questions, and I also want to show you a deal. So are there any questions here? And I want to obviously respect all your time. Any questions in the chat, or you want to come off mute?
I have a quick question, and I apologize if this sounds so green. I thought 1031, you had to change it for a like property. So how does that work to go from a duplex you own to a commercial building?
Great question. And I think that's a very typical misconception in the real estate industry. And again, you may want to get advice from your 1031 or your accountant. And I used to think exactly that I could only go from raw land to raw land or something like that. But the way it was explained to me, and where my accountant is comfortable in my 1031 company, is if you're holding something for investment, it is like. And there's quite a bit of leeway on that in the history for the IRS. And again, I am not an accountant, but vacant land sometimes can be a little bit risky for an audit if it's more like farm ground or something that you're just getting for recreation and it's not intended to be income producing. But I've never had anybody say there was any problem with going from single family to multifamily to commercial or any of the asset classes like that. Good question, thank you. And this is, I know we're jumping around, but we have different levels here. I really do, I'm glad that you asked that question. Any other questions out there?
And just to chime in on that 1031, we just did one where it was a vacant lot in Midway and exchange it into an industrial building in West Valley. So,
guys, that is I could teach a whole nother class on this. Like, I don't want to get political here or anything, but the tax code, and Taylor has heard me riffing on this lately. The tax code in the United States is absolutely a money grab for people that own real estate. Like, there is no group that has ever had better treatment than people that own real estate. And I'm almost embarrassed sometimes to talk to my friends who are W-2 employees and don't own real estate at some of the advantages that I have. I don't know that I agree with all of it, and yet I'm taking full advantage of it. It is just crazy, the difference in what owning real estate. I mean, I could do a whole class on that. I'm doing a thing called accelerated depreciation. I do cost segregation. Even if you take out some of those things, if all you're looking at is depreciation that you get from owning a real estate asset, and that is that you basically take a loss of the value and you spread out over 39 years. So there was a point in my career I was making about $200,000 or $300,000 in commissions, and with about 8 rental properties, I was depreciation. I would get about $100,000 of that income taken off of my taxes just from the depreciation from residential real estate. I mean, it's all, just own real estate, and the longer you own it, the tax code is set up. It is ridiculous. And again, I'm not sending the checks back. I'm just saying if you don't know about it, you should learn more about it. And it's incredible. And this 1031 is the biggest thing. So think about that. Linda made a $300,000 gain. I'm just making this up, but it's probably true, on a house in Rose Park. If she sells that and just takes it as ordinary income, whether it's Trump or Biden or anything, she's probably at a 30 to 35% tax bracket. That's $90,000 that would be taken out on federal and state taxes day one if it was just ordinary income. She sells that, takes advantage of this crazy market, trades it to something else. She pays $0 in taxes. Now, you're deferring the taxes. It'll be paid at some point in the future, but that whole time she's taking all that money is getting a return for her and going to work, as opposed to building a freeway somewhere that Uncle Sam would do with the money. Again, this isn't all about taxes, but okay, so I know some guys have to jump off. I'll spend a few minutes on this deal. I put a small file folder together that I was hoping to get to. I think this was helpful. But I will send this out. If you send me a ping or Brooke on my team and just ask for a link, I'll send it. And it's a couple pro formas and a few deals. It also has some of this cost segregation stuff that's a little bit more sophisticated. I would just ask you, keep it to yourself. I don't want any of my cost segregation tax stuff out there for the public. And I think I want to be of value to you guys and be able to share stuff with you, but I also don't need my own personal information blasted out on your Facebook page or any of that stuff. So just really, I ask you to honor that. And if you're willing to do that and send me an email, I will send you a link that has a couple of pro formas and a cost segregation report that, again, if you get the concept of this, you should learn about it. And you can do it in residential real estate also, but it's just a unbelievable tax advantage. I know most of you guys are making a crap load of money right now, so you're probably looking for ways to pay less taxes.
Well, Boyd, thank you so much. We've run out of time, and I think there's another meeting that's starting at noon, so I don't want to postpone theirs. But really wonderful insight. I think everybody here, like Boyd, is such a great resource, and I think very open to helping us as agents to really build wealth and have, our retirement set up through commercial or any other kind of investing. Just round of applause for Boyd. You can get some Zoom applause.
Send me a ping. I will get those links out, and we can have individual conversations on the content after that.
Sounds great.
Thanks,
Everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.